Welcome to the WordLab spelling program. In this video, you will learn about the theory behind WordLab and the structure of WordLab. WordLab is based upon the four spelling knowledges: the visual, the phonological, the morphological, and the etymological. There's a common misperception that visual knowledge is the basis of spelling. What we know is in the early years, and possibly later, rote visual memory is limited to letter strings of 2 to 3 letters only. In the early years, it's useful for learning small irregular words as a mental orthographic image alongside the phonology. In the first 2 to 3 years, children learn about the phonology of language as they learn the sounds associated with single letters, digraphs, trigraphs, and rhymes. These form the early foundation for the phonological component of spelling and are critical for correct spelling. There's overwhelming evidence to say that systematic explicit phonics teaching needs to be part of the classroom program for the first 3 years. Then there's the morphological knowledge. Now we know a morpheme is the smallest meaningful unit of language. These are the affixes, prefixes, and suffixes, the stem, the root, and the base. Finally, there is the etymological knowledge. And this is a knowledge of word origins, which helps create a fascination with words. Many children enjoy learning how words work. In the upper classes, there's evidence to show that it contributes to spelling proficiency. For instance, if we give the word disaster to the class, we can tell them that the prefix dis means bad, and it comes from the Greek. And aster, star, also comes from the Greek. And it means a bad star. Well, how does this relate to the meaning of disaster as we use it today? Well, it appears that the sense is astrological and a calamity based upon the unfavorable position of a planet. Now, how do these four knowledges fit together? Well, in the first 3 years, the emphasis is on the visual knowledge and the phonological knowledge as children build up a knowledge of the smaller words. About year 2, the morphological knowledge starts to cut in, and that extends right the way through school to year 8 and beyond. And the etymological knowledge comes in a little later, around years 6, 7, and 8. Now that does not mean that these knowledges are restricted to these years. This is when they have their most emphasis. This quote from Louisa Moats, who's an expert in teaching spelling, sums it up nicely. She says, "Good spellers develop insights into how words are spelled based upon sound letter correspondences. So that's the phonology. Meaningful parts of words, that's the morphology, and word origins and history, and that's the etymology. This knowledge in turn supports a specialized memory system, a memory for letters of words." So this is where theory starts meeting practice. So how do we put this theory into practice? Well, we know there's a necessity to build knowledge of how words are constructed. But we also know there's a necessity for students to learn high usage words and irregular words. And this is done through the explicit teaching of whole words and word patterns. Now, the whole words are taught through the list of our words. And the our words is a term that WordLab uses to include many of the words that children have to learn. Each year list contains 80 to 100 words. The lists contain all of the essential words required by the national standards. In the first 2 years, they're matched to the phonics levels. And in the early years, they contain high usage words, later years, commonly misspelt words, and words of high utility. The students are required to master the spelling of these words. They are given the whole word list at the beginning of the year, and 3 to 4 words are studied and learned each week. Pre-testing determines the starting level. Most students will learn the list assigned for that year. However, struggling students will learn the list determined by the pre-test. Very able students will be given extension work using chart words. Now, the charts are a big feature of WordLab because these contain all the patterns of the language, all the phonological, the morphological, and the etymological patterns that are required by the national curriculum. The patterns occur at the point that the children need them, as stated by the national curriculum. They reappear through the years in increasingly more complex words. All students work on the same pattern during the plenary. the students are not required to master the chart words. They are simply for exploration over time. Now, how is all this delivered? Well, spelling is taught each day for 20 minutes. Each lesson in year 1 to 8 consists of a 10-minute plenary where the whole class is taught together. And then there's a 10-minute individual or group practice time. In that time, the teacher goes towards those children who need more teaching. So this is where differentiated instruction occurs during the practice time. In year 1, phonics stages 2 to 3, the whole lesson is a plenary. Now, how is the teaching delivered? Well, it's delivered through structured and repetitive routines. And routines are excellent for the learner because they're freed up to dedicate all their cognitive energy to the new learning. They know exactly what is coming next. They get used to success, and with reduced anxiety, they increase their participation. And the teacher is freed up to monitor the skill level. There's 5 separate weekly lesson plans, 1 for each area of the school. There's continuous assessments, so it's a full pre-testing, continuous monitoring of learning through formal and informal assessments. Well, what about spelling rules? Does WordLab teach spelling rules? Spelling rules are developed through exploration, so they're not taught per se. This quote from Patricia Cunningham, another expert in teaching phonics and spelling, sums it up nicely when she says, "The brain is a pattern detector and not a rule applier." Patterns and morphological relationships are the keys to unlocking pronunciation, spelling, and meaning, and we need to issue these keys to all students. Thank you.